Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. So this is a little bit special situation. I usually only do this for really big pieces when I'm trying to maybe compare and contrast. So whenever you see my kitchen table, it's special because of a few things. Number one, I have to remove all the junk on the kitchen table to create the space to put these things on there. And number two, normally I only have this type of scenario when I literally can't put the statues on the countertop because they're just too big and I can't, easily compare the two. I can't use the backgrounds or anything because again, these things are too gigantic. So every time you see the kitchen table, it's because there's something special going on, whether it's a Star Destroyer or whether it's because I'm comparing like the three alien warrior heads, the dog and the alien warrior and the big chap. Or in this case, we're gonna just talk about my two Magnetos. So these are the only two Magnetos I own in-house. I have, I think, two more on pre-order. They're a lot smaller than this, a little bit more elegant. But I just wanted to sort of compare and contrast the two. I've done really long reviews on both of these. The so-called RCB Magneto on the left, I put in tons of time because just showing how to put them together and then reviewing him. And of course, the XM White Magneto, I sort of incorporated the review along with the how-to instructions, the assembly instructions. Hopefully those were somewhat useful. So those you can, obviously look at your leisure. You can find them on older videos on my channel. So I won't go into too much repetition of what I've already talked about for those pieces. But the reason I wanted to do this at great effort, because let me tell you, both of these things weigh a metric ton. I'm thinking at least 30 pounds, maybe a bit more. And just, moving them around is just such a tiring thing, especially because again, it's not like a 30-pound barbell. This is actually like a 30-pound statue with, as you can appreciate, tons of little things that can fall off, and it's just very awkward weight, that you're trying to move around. But I went through the energy to do it because I think it's just a really nice to compare and contrast the two. Both the red and the white playing off each other really nicely. And they both are exhibiting sort of the similar thing in the sense that they both have sculpted capes, which a lot of collectibles companies, statue companies are moving away from because they're finding that the engineering, there are issues and challenges with sculpted capes. You put that sculpted cape up there, you better really know what you're doing with the center of gravity, with the weight distribution, because those statues are going to lean, the resin can crack, and they add a tremendous amount of space and weight to the statue, so that it increases shipping cost, the whole 9 yards. So a lot of companies are now moving toward posable cloth capes or fabric capes, which have their own unique charm and advantages. But again, nothing quite beats the complete control that a sculpted cape gives you. You can sculpt it and make it exactly what you want it to do, and especially when you are working with a character like, say, Magneto or Superman who's flying, the way that cape swirls and the way the cape sits is such a huge part of buying into the illusion of the character either flying or, in this case, levitating. And so I think for that reason, sculpted capes are probably still, in my opinion, the better way to go, despite all of the disadvantages, the risks for characters that have to fly, like a Mags or a Superman, for instance. So again, they're both, they both have the sculpted capes, and both characters are levitating. These are the two Magnetos out there of this size and scale and detail, where the primary focus is trying to kind of show the levitation effect. And so I think, again, sort of looking at the two, there's a lot in common. So let's check it out. So just looking at the base, there's a lot of metal in the bases of these Magnetos. In this case, of course, you're looking at a World War II type base. There's, again, the twisted girders with the rebars all over the place. We talked about that in the helmets. So that's kind of where he's at, and then behind you can see sort of the ripped open concrete fencing. There's the barbed wire, and then again the rebars everywhere in the fence, the concrete fence. So you're kind of getting that again, that the impression of the power of the Magneto, where he's using his powers of magnetism to his advantage and tearing things apart. So that's the base here. And I think if you want to compare and contrast, over here you sort of have him essentially blowing the metal apart. You can actually feel and see the crater effect of all the metal bowing out, or bowing out. You can see the treads of the tanks all the way up. A very nice effect here where you actually see a piece of the tank tread stuck on the back. The base on him doesn't take up quite as much space on the white XM, but it's a little bit taller. You can see sort of the X on the back over here, which is kind of a nice touch. And so again, you can sort of see the combination of concrete, rebar, and metal being forced apart by his globe of magnetism almost. A bit more detail, I think, on the XM base. I do like it a little bit more. It's a little more compact. I do love the fact that if you pay attention, you realize that this is basically the parts of the tank that he's blowing apart. And kind of a nice touch that from the back, it forms an X, which is a nice little homage, right, to the X-Men. So I like that. Really beautiful detail again on the rivets here, the rusty metal. So I have to give the base to XM here. Not to say that the RCB Max is anything to be ashamed of. Look at the beautiful barbed wire work here. Requires a lot of time and effort to put together. A bit more skulls on the base, almost like a Terminator type. But hopefully coming close, you can see all the little bits of barbed wire that have to be put together. So that's very nice as well. But again, in terms of overall detailing, the XM base just is a little bit better. Okay. In terms of sculpt quality and the cape. The cape is a little bit better quality on the XM mags, a little bit better resin than the cape here that the factory used. But I think the cape is sculpted better on this one here. I mean, Daniel Bell really did a just jaw-dropping effect. There's a lot more swirls, and the cape just gives you, there's just a lot more going on with the cape, with the way it's blowing out, billowing out. It's very, very beautiful. The XM Magneto cape still gives you that feeling of wind, but again, it doesn't have quite the character, if that's the word I'm looking for. It doesn't have quite the character that the RCB mags have when you're looking again at the cape of the two, okay? Again, both nice, but I just feel like the RCB Magneto has a little bit more going on with the cape. Here's the back part. You can see where the cape is going here on the XM, and then look at the cape here on the RCB. Just magnificent. This is swirling up and down, much longer, and it just, again, the quality of the XM I like a bit more. I think the resin here is not quite as good quality in terms of resin, but the sculpt I think is better in terms of denoting motion and giving you again the illusion of levitation. When we're talking about the actual sculpt of the musculature, if you're talking about, again, the white costume, it's fantastic. A great detailing, the little pouches on the belt. This is, of course, the white costume in terms of the musculature of the arms, the paint job. You can see the detailing here that's digitally sculpted. The rectus abdomini, the stomach muscles, the pecs, the biceps, all that very, very nice. The helmet, everything's just really clean. White is a nice look, has a unique look. But when you compare it to the RCB, there's not a whole lot of difference in my opinion. Daniel Bell, again, it's going to be hard beating that guy. I mean, he just sculpts with such power. He sculpts such a great sense of motion, dynamic movement. His anatomy is spot on. So again, I think it's, in terms of just the sculpt and the quality of the sculpt, the details, I feel like it's essentially a push, essentially almost a tie between, the XM white and the RCB red. I can't really find any nits to pick on the anatomy of either one. They're both fantastic, along with the texturing, all A+ on both sides. In terms of the heads, definitely I feel like the Magneto head is painted better on the XM, which is no surprise. I mean, XM Studios uses some of the best factories. Even the bald head for the XM mags is fantastic. They're all done very nicely. Whereas the RCB one, again, it's a great sculpt, but the resin, the translucency of it, leaves a little bit to be desired. And the different heads are not quite as good as the XM. It's a little bit more redundant, it's like we got the helmeted head, serious, helmeted head, screaming, unhelmeted, serious, unhelmeted, screaming, but they're just sort of like minor variations on the same thing. Whereas here, at least there's a lot of difference. I mean, he's got the classic white helmet on, and there's the bald version, and then there's the unmasked version. So I kind of give the head sculpt to the XM in terms of the quality of it. But in terms of the preference, again, you have to split down the middle, because I like the RCB better. You can see his face nicer when he has the helmet on. I love the helmet of the white, but you can't really see his face. And you gotta get really up close, and you gotta tilt it from a very specific angle to really appreciate this amazing sculpt. And so I love my mags usually helmeted, and it's just harder again to see the XM version versus the RCB version. Both great, but that's just a matter of preference. Again, I like the paint better on the XM, but I like the art design and this, essentially the sculpt, I guess. Even though both are sculpted very well, I just like the sculpt a little bit better on the RCB, because you can see his face better, So there you have that. In terms of the final thing that I like to look at, which is the levitation effect. Again, these are two of the best levitating Magnetos in my opinion. And when it comes to the levitation effect, which really sells that Magneto as a statue character, again, these two, in my opinion, are two of the best on the market. There is a custom by Mad X, which is a really, really nice regal floating version, and that sells the flotation very nicely as well. It's long sold out, very, very expensive, but it makes me feel like it's a little bit crude. It was made, I think, many years ago, probably 8-9 years ago. It's almost like a large Bowen version of Magneto, and does not quite have the ambition and the detailing that some of these newer pieces have. It has a nice base, has Wolverine skeleton and that type of thing, so it is very good as far as that goes, but it's much more simple, okay, than what we're used to now, with the ambition of these producers and these companies. So for, as far as I'm concerned, I still think these are two of the best out there, and it's hard to choose. But if I had to choose one, I do have to say that I like the levitation effect on RCB Magneto better. I feel like this right here is the very best levitation effect Magneto ever done. Daniel Bell, in my original review, I said it and I'll say it again, he really maybe, bottle lightning in a jar, because he did a crazy good job on this. Just the way the hands are, raised up, the way the legs are. Again, he's supported by, a little tiny support structure here, but because of the way it's integrated to the base, you back up and the illusion is just so good with the pose and the cape, even with the support on both, where clearly both feet are supported from the base. He gives you the stronger impression that he is levitating, and that's completely sold by the pose and the cape. Whereas ironically for XM, they have a lot more flotation or levitation powers with the ball and metal that Magneto's kind of crushing them with the balls, and he's going to hurl them at his enemies. It's supposed to be levitating, and it is, but it's really hard to appreciate because its connection to the finger is so close. And so you're supposed to get the idea that he is levitating it, but because the attachment point is to the tip of that thumb on both areas, and they used this to greater effect on the original Magneto on Throne, Magneto on the Sentinel hand, it just looks like kind of like he's just holding the balls of metal, which is not quite as cool. The alternative display for XM is the one where he's holding the hand out and freezing the missile in midair. But for that to work, you have to have the missile connected with the metal strip. And I at least feel like that looks a little bit cheesy. I think that kind of destroys the illusion. You want to give the illusion of levitation, the illusion of magnetic power is at play. And so for here, while this is a nice effect that it's going for, it doesn't quite sell the illusion as well, okay? And so for that reason, I just like the power pose by Mags here a lot better, because they are not concerned with trying to give you the effect of magnetism using the arms. They're able to sculpt the arms with one goal only, which is sell the levitation. And for that, they do a great job. And again, a much more powerful pose in this version versus this version. Here, you know, again, when you just compare the two, there's just more power on the RCB version, more force, more dynamic, posing. Whereas here, you know, he's not quite, the arms are kind of locked in place and not quite as good. So there's that. And here, this Mag's, of course, supported on the back of the X structure with an actual screw. And so he's actually held up on the back. And this is really cunningly done, because the way it's done here from a lot of different angles, you don't really buy that. Again, you can see from the side, you can clearly see where it's at, but you can see the gap here, and it's actually right here. So it is a very, very tricky little way that they figured out to keep him balanced. From here, of course, you can actually see the screw that keeps everything. It's a long screw that keeps everything together. So, he's suspended in a very clever way by the crease of the cape that you would never think would be strong enough to hold him, and yet it does. Okay, so the engineering is pretty ingenious, very, very nice. And so using that technique, you can see that the feet actually absolutely are levitating. The feet doesn't touch anything. He's floating, okay? But despite the fact that the XM Mags is literally floating in midair, again, in my opinion, I'd be interested in yours. When I back up, you look at the two, it just feels like the RCB one, the one on the left, it just feels like he's floating more. That's the crazy part. Despite the fact that the RCB Magneto is actually being supported, both feet are being supported off the base, he looks like he's flying more than the XM Magneto. And that's all art design, that's all sculpt. Because they don't have the feet quite pointed enough, the legs are too close together, it's the pose just is a little bit more sedate on the XM Magneto. And so because of that, you have to get a lot closer. I mean, like literally, we're talking like right up here, like this close, to truly appreciate, oh, he is floating, literally levitating in midair, and that's how he's displayed. So, for my money, best pose still goes to the RCB Magneto. So these two are very, very close if you want to talk about art design and about just the engineering of the pieces. I do feel like the XM Magneto is a little bit better because it's official license. The factory's a little bit maybe better. It's a little bit cleaner. The paint app, a lot better in my opinion on the XM pieces across the board. The way they put it together, a lot of that is very, very good, okay? I think the instructions are mediocre for both, but at least there were no errors as far as I can tell with RCB, where there were some errors with XM. It's a lot classier. The instructions for XM is like a really nice glossy book, like all XM products. So it's a lot classier packaging. RCB just comes in a regular box, which is fine. XM comes in a very, very boutique box. So everything's classier on this side, higher production value, but more errors in the instructions, and overall effect when it comes to art design, everything in the RCB still wins because of Daniel Bell's amazing sculpt. Again, both very good, but I would give the edge to the RCB one as my favorite Magneto still. However, out on the market, if you're like a connoisseur of Magnetos, depending on what you like, there just isn't any white ones. This white costume, I think is sort of like a little niche, phase that he went through. Not really known to a lot of casual fans, and so you just don't see a great Magneto that's in a white costume of this quality, and so I'm very happy and proud to own it, and it'll be displayed very nicely. And I think the two of these pieces, just because of the way they're posed and how they're both sort of floating, and also the similarity of the base, make for a beautiful display. We have a lot of Magnetos destroying Sentinels because it's sort of like a match made in heaven. It's all about matchups, right? And so there's one thing that Magneto would be especially, uniquely, beautifully equipped to destroy and rip to pieces is a Sentinel. So there's tons of great Magneto versus Sentinel pieces. These two are great Magneto statues that don't involve Sentinels. That sort of puts them against the backdrop of the World War II aspect of the character's story. And so I do appreciate that. And so based on that, the two are sort of like a set almost. Not exactly a set, but they share thematic similarities when it comes to appreciating them. And so I think they display together quite beautifully. And if you're fortunate enough to own both, this will certainly be a really nice way of displaying them. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that just because of the way my display is. I'll have to move things around a little bit. Maybe later, I'll try to get that to happen. They'll be going to different places. So it's another one of the reasons for me to kind of make this review is this is a nice opportunity to sort of show the two of them side by side. So there you have it. This is my comparison of the RCB Magneto and the XM Magneto. And I'm just going to sort of walk through it one more time so you sort of have an example of what they look like from the behind and the sides. These two are, they are in scale, both quarter scale, and they both look like they're about the same size. So excellent scaling. Here you go here. Again, very, very nice. So I hope you enjoyed that. There's a couple of people out there who own both, not a whole lot, because they're both actually reasonably rare pieces. The RCB is a little bit rarer than the XM one. I think they made 1,000 of the XM or 999, and of the RCB, I think it's probably less than half that, if that. I know that Extreme Collectibles on YouTube has both of these. He painted the RCB version in black, so his is a real interesting contrast, black and white, for instance. And then, of course, he has the classic red costume with the sort of the super Magneto on the Sentinel's hand. I won't give away the name of the custom group that created that one. I think everyone knows what that one is. It's the Magneto floating above a huge, the Sentinel hand is basically almost like the size of this thing up to here. It's huge. So he's got all three, and he did a really nice review of all three. Whereas for me, I like these two, and these two for now are enough for me. So again, this is just my perspective to add to Extreme Collectibles. I don't have the benefit, of course, of the third one, but mine is sort of the classic colors again of both. And so hopefully some of you found that interesting. Again, seeing the two side by side, not much of a chance for a lot of people to be able to appreciate that and sort of give you an idea of the similarities and the differences and what I see. So until next time, do take care. We're going to check out and move into a different arena from superheroes to aliens. And so that'll be the next statue review that I'm going to be delivering. Take care.